Hi guys, welcome back to video 6, module 2, prescience from observation. In this instance, when we talk about prescience from observation, we're going to be talking about a presumed dependency. So here we're going to start to make some deductions about our account holders based on their spending history. Okay guys, so I've started a new PHP file called passmod to jfy_dependence, and let me just put in some comments here about what this is actually going to be about. Okay, so passmod module 2, this is for just, let me just capitalize that, just for you, dependence. And I'm just going to put a little bit of blurb about what is the objective of this, what is the meaning of this module. So module 2 implements a container for the insertion of the SKU brand where the master ledger has recorded child sales to account holders. So this is what we're talking about when we start talking about a prescience from observation, where we've observed that there's going to be, or where there is a spending pattern where an adult has purchased for a child. We are going to make a deduction that, looking back on a 90-day period, that person, that account holder, has a child dependency. Further than that, we're going to be able to look and we're going to see what gender that is, and we're also going to be able to estimate the age based upon the actual clothes size that have been used for the child. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit more and then I'll go on to explain how we're going to achieve this. Okay, so this particular PHP file is heavily based on the module 1 PHP file, but I've been making a couple of tweaks. I'm just going to take you through what I've done. So you'll recognize all of this at the top, where we've got the includes and we've got the code where I suppress notices and where I'm increasing timeout. That's all exactly the same. Down here you'll see that I've got the history equals 90 days and seconds for the timestamp, and account holder we're still using George Bailey as our example. When I come on into phase 3 of the project, when we start talking about personal relationship as a service, that's the point at which I'll look at making these two variables dynamic. At the moment I specifically went to sort of curtail it to one specific account holder with a 90-day period. Okay, so what this is going to do, again we're going to start looking at propensity index for George Bailey for account 45112309, and we're going to look and we're going to see, 1, is there a sale in any of the boys categories, 2, any of the girls categories, 3, any of the junior categories. Now if I just go back to our Excel spreadsheet where we have the exploded propensity index for George Bailey, we can see that here we have got 2 sales for boys. Yeah, so variable array position 27, which is boys fashions, and yes, we can see that there are 2 sales attributed to that. And then we've got position 28, which is the SKU band, so that was the best SKU band, which was a 3. There are no girls sales, there are no junior sales, so there's just those boys sales. So those are what we're going to be using as the example of how we're actually going to do this. So I've set up a new table called dependent relationships, and this contains the account number, the epoch, the gender, the estimated age and the date that this cell was actually, I'm sorry, this record was last updated. So let's talk about how we keep this updated. It's done very much on the same basis as we have done for the propensity table, for the propensity index, and it is a piece of code which would be run usually on a cron tab or on some kind of a schedule each night to make sure that this information is always fresh each day. Okay, so if we now look back in the code, we can see that we've got three if statements. So if prop key 19, 21 or 23 if any of those are greater than 0, that means we would have sales in either junior fashions, junior footwear or junior sportswear, in which case a new variable, path diff, equals _j. We do the same for the boys, so we've got prop key 27, 29 and 31, and again we're talking about boys fashion, boys footwear or boys sportswear. In that instance, if we have sales of those, we have path diff equals b _b, and then we do the same for the three girls, 35, 37, 39, so that we've got fashion, footwear and sportswear, and that means that we get the variable equal to _g. Bearing in mind that we've only just pulled through and we're only dealing with one record, so that would be the last record of a sale in the master ledger for either junior, boys or girls categories. Okay, so now we select SKU brand and epoch from the master ledger, where account number equals the account holder, in which case that is the account number of George Bailey, and SKU brand is not empty, and epoch is greater than time minus history, history equaling 7,776,000 seconds, 90 days. Order it by epoch, and I'm limiting it by 10. Now this dependency container that we could potentially be adding to the ezine, it works in exactly the same way as the just for you that we worked on the previous video. So it starts to look for, have we got any specific SKU brands that the account holder has used, and if so, can we then actually see, and if there is a dependency, would it also relate to any fashion, footwear or sportswear for that dependency as well. So in the case of George Bailey, we know that we do have a SKU brand. We know that there's Arsenal, because we've just done that in the previous video, and we have now got the just for you section in the retail sales ezine, where we have all of those three Arsenal FC items. So now what we want to do is we want to say, oh, okay, fine, so we've brought that SKU brand up again. We would get the same result from this select. We would still end up with Arsenal FC, and now it's the case of, you know, is that marketable to children? In this case it absolutely is. So in this case we're saying, you know, that George Bailey potentially has a son. We know his age from his size, so that's going to be 7, and it's highly likely that if George Bailey is a supporter of Arsenal, that he's also going to want that for his son too. And so, as a good marketeer in Tim's online store, the best store online, you should shop there. Yeah, I indeed would like to market for his dependent son. So the next thing I'm going to show you, in the same way that the photography was key to how PHP processed just for you, it's going to be the same for dependencies. So if I go into my FTP, here we go. I'm going to go into media. I'm going to go into just for you there. Okay, so there is Arsenal FC, which is the folder that we used on the last video, and there's another folder, Arsenal FC _B, so that is for boys. So in actual fact, my store would also in reality have two more folders. One would be Arsenal _FC _G for girls, for if you had a daughter, and also Arsenal _FC _J, potentially if he'd made a junior sale. But we know that he's got a boy, we know he's got a son, or we can deduce that he's got a son from his spending patterns. So in here, in the same way as we had for Arsenal FC, the FC _B folder also has three images, 1, 2, 3 JPG. Now, so if we come back into here, so this if statement here would have been true. Yep, so if prop key 27 is greater than 0, well, prop key 27 are boys fashions. We know there were 2 sales in that prop key, so it is indeed greater than 0. Therefore, the path diff variable equals _B. So if you just keep that in the back of your mind, because in the same way that we checked to see if there was any photography in Just For You for Arsenal FC, for George Bailey himself, we do exactly the same thing. This is exactly the same code, it's just modified from the previous file, the Just For You video, where we're going to say if file exists, and then we're going to give the address, email media just for you, followed by the SKU brand variable, which in this case we know is Arsenal FC because we've picked that up as a SKU brand from the master ledger. Dot, we're going to concatenate path diff. Now path diff is _B /1.jpg. So that's actually just saying, does file exist in this folder here, Arsenal _FC _B 1.jpg. Yes, it does exist. So we know that it is marketable, and as a Just For You, or as part of the Just For You. So if we go back into the code, what we can now do is, yes, that is true. Therefore, we are going to create another container. So the last video we created container JFU. Now we are going to create container JFU DEP. And this follows exactly the same pattern as the JFU container. So the imagery that we use here, for example, is pointing to the boys Arsenal FC folder. And just to show that, if I've got $JFU here equals string to lower SKU brand mod I, which will be for George, it's going to be Arsenal FC, concatenated with path diff, which we know that gives us the _B. So we know that the image file is being targeted correctly to go in and get the boys Arsenal FC 3 images. So that's exactly the same, and it's exactly the same that these are clickable. So we are also setting up the hrefs, and here they are, as you can see. There you go. And again, it changes it to a unique code. So again, we've got $JFU is sitting within that unique code. So that will make sure that when people click on that, that the PHP landing page actually directs them directly to the project that they've clicked on. Okay, so now that we've done that, so we have created a container, and as we did on the Just For You, that's all we do is we go back into the send newsletter modular.php, and just like we did for Just For You, we add as a concatenation this container here. So that's container JFU DEP. Now, if there had been no sales for any dependents, that will be empty, that variable, so nothing will be attached to the easing for that section. In this case, we know that there is a boy sale, so what should now happen is that container should be attached, and we should see something specifically for essentially for Arsenal FC merchandise for a 7-year-old boy. So I think what we're now going to do is we're going to run the send newsletter modular.php, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, there it is. Okay, we've done that. So that will now have actually sent the e-zine to my inbox. So we just refresh. There it is. George, check out our new spring summer range. So now this should be exactly the same as we've had for all of the previous videos, but we should get this new section right at the end. Here we go. Yep. Is Arsenal, which was the one for the dad, for George. And now we should have underneath it, yeah, we do. Okay, so here we've got for the boys, kids, and here we've got 3 Arsenal products. So we've got the Arsenal shirt, we've got the Arsenal shin protectors, and we've got the kids Arsenal football. So that's worked. So we've deepened our personal relationship even further with George. Not only are we giving him aspirational images based on his spending patterns, we're giving him actual categories based on his actual sales ledger for the last 90 days. And now we're also giving him a Just For You and a similar Just For You, but for the boys, for his son, who we're making the assumption we have deduced that he is his dependent because he does indeed have a boys sale or 2 boys sales in the last 90 days. So that's worked. That's great. So we are continuing to deepen that relationship. But there's a little bit more that I want to add. Okay, so the last thing that I want to add is I've gone back to pasmod to jfydependence.php, and since we now know that it is true that he has made boy sales in the last 90 days, and we've added the container for JFU DEP, we can now do something else. We can say if the current month that we're marketing in is August, there's something else that we can do. We can add another container for back to school items. So this tiny little bit down here will do that. So the first thing that I want to do is we already know, we've already got epoch time because we pulled that out. So we from the database. So I'm converting that into a month here. Into a date variable, and now I'm saying if date equals 04, and I'm slightly cheating this because in the sales ledger the boys sales were made back a little bit further, so I am cheating it a little bit here, and rather than saying for the 8th, I'm going to say for the 4th, but in reality it would be the 8th. If date equals the 4th and path diff equals _b, which it will do, we have a new container. We have a container BTS, which is container back to school. Now, obviously, in Tim's store, we would also have, if date equals 04, or what it really should be, which is 08 for August, and path diff equals _g, or another statement if it's _j, then it would go through to container BTS equals. This particular container is pointing to imagery specifically for boys back to school. So let's now rerun this, and we'll actually rerun this file, and let's see what happens with the email that we're going to get, because there should now be a back to school section added also. Okay, so here we are with a blank tab. So let's go back to send newsletter modular.php. Okay, it's done it. So this should now have an e-zine in my inbox, which it does, and this should include back to school. So let's open it and let's scroll down. There it is. Okay, so now we've got, at the very bottom, we've got a back to school with boys schoolwear imagery, and again that links through to a page with a variable attached on the click-through of UID equals BTS. So in the instance that we click this, that they will then go through to a landing page which will be able to use that variable to pass them on to the correct page for the boys back to school wear. Fantastic. So we've now got two personalized sections to deepen that personal relationship. So we've got the for the boys kids Arsenal wear based on Just For You for George, and we've got the back to school. Now obviously this is a deduction that we've made, that George, if he's made these two purchases, then yes, we're going to say that's his son. Obviously we, as a rule, we're going to be going back probably no more ever than 90 days, unless we're talking about reactivating dormant accounts, which is a completely different piece of marketing activity, and which this wouldn't even apply. But if it is the case that, you know, George bought them for for somebody else, maybe he had a girlfriend or something, and it was for her son, maybe they split up, maybe he doesn't need those children's sections in here at all. What that means, obviously, because we're always looking back 90 days, that sort of within the next sort of 2-3 months this will drop off, because there will be no more boy sales. Okay, so we have deepened the relationship further, which is great. So on my next video, what we're going to start to be looking is how do you use PHP graphics extensions to personalize a lot of the graphics specifically for the account holders, and again using their previous purchasing history in combination with the propensity index. So I will look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot.